Hello and welcome back to live coverage of the Apex Gaming 2K Pioneer Open. I'm Tandy, joined by Ross Merriam. Say hi, Ross.
Hi, Ross.
And we got 2 rounds in the books, but 4 more rounds of Swiss and 3 more rounds of top 8 where we're going to crown a champion. Ross, what are we going to be watching this round?
We're going to be watching a little bit more of Kyle Montgomery. We saw the end of his last match, the previous round against Tori of the Vast. That is the Bant Lotus Field deck, so essentially the Azorius deck that we know, sort of a Lotus Field control deck using Stern Proctor and Discontinuity to avoid the trigger, but splashing green for the newly printed Up the Beanstalk. But this is a deck that has lots of expensive spells in order to maximize the mana that Lotus Field gives you. So small splash there should be a really interesting deck, and we wanted to see more of it. So that's what we're featuring so far. And then his opponent, Andrew Wolthius, is going to be on Boros Heroic, one of the sort of oldest decks in Pioneer, been around since the format's beginning.
Feather. It used to be called Boros Feather, and then they cut the feathers because they cost too much.
Yeah, you want to have a much lower curve. It's gotten some upgrades over the years. Ancestral Anger is another cantripping pump spell to go along with Defiant Strike. Things like Dreadhorde Arcanist, but a very fast, aggressive deck. So Kyle Montgomery is going to have to be wary of that. Fortunately, has plenty of sweepers to handle this matchup. Doomscar being the most important, I think, here because it is the cheapest.
Yes.
You can foretell it on turn 2 for 2 mana, then cast it for 3 mana on turn 3. That's going to be a really, really important card, and one that Wolthius is going to have to play around. If there's a turn 2 foretell, you kind of know the jig is up. Also, 3 copies of Farewell in the main deck, so 6 sweepers. Those are going to be really important. Going to have to find them. Going to have to cast them early because this Boros Heroic deck does not give you a lot of time.
Yeah, this is a excuse me, Team Swish Gaming mirror match. So let's head on down to the feature match area and watch them face off. We got Bant, Lotus Field Control versus Boros Heroic.
Now
on the races.
On the heroic side, the number of haste creatures in the deck is going to be important because those are creatures that you can hold back in the face of a sweeper and then immediately recover and start applying pressure. Things like the Monastery Swiftspear that you see from turn 1 and 10th District Legionnaire.
All right, well, we are starting hot and heavy. Kyle Montgomery plays an Up Your Beanstalk, and Andrew Wolthius is going to get 2 Monastery Swiftspears in play. See if he can pile on the damage with one of those cycling 1-mana cards that we talked about just a moment ago, or if he wants to go ahead and deploy another threat.
Yeah, Andrew Wolthius also digging into Wildspell Drain, has 4 copies of Monstrous Rage in the deck.
Oh, Monstrous Rage is a heater. Monstrous Rage is it's like a pump spell, but it also puts a roll token on your creature,
a
right?
monster roll that gives +1/+1 and trample. Also gives +2/+0 until end of turn, but the +1/+1 and trample stays permanently. So sort of an upgrade to Titan Strength that these decks used to play.
All right, well, players are playing hot and heavy. We dealt an extra damage, put a counter on one of our Swiftspears last turn. Montgomery down to 14, but has March of the Otherworldly Light to interact and knock off the bigger Swiftspear. Here's a favorite Hoplite, and we're going to play the pump spell from the graveyard. This flashback put a +1/+1 counter on my creature card. I can't remember the name of it right off the top.
Homestead Courage.
Homestead Courage, that's it. And it's pretty powerful in this deck, even though it doesn't look great, but it's 2 spells for 1, which is nice.
Yeah, and anytime you can trigger Heroic on your creatures multiple times, even if the initial effect is somewhat underpowered, you're really playing it in order to stack those triggers.
All right, well, we have a Strict Proctor followed by a Foretell card. We're not sure exactly what it is, but it's probably a Doomscar. Here comes another pump spell. These alternate arts are killing me, man. I gotta say. Maybe it's another Homestead Courage. We're gonna... Nope, that's a God's Willing. Because we're scrying the 1. We put a counter on the favorite Hoplite, giving it protection from white. Now we're gonna see if we can punch through a bunch of damage here.
That looks like a Homestead Courage. Or is that another... Yeah, it's got to be because we're getting a counter on it.
We drew a card, so it's definitely not.
So is that Defiant Strike? Are we representing the extra power from Defiant Strike as a counter?
Look, they're in an alternate language, and I've literally never seen that art before. So you got me. We'll just say pump spells. We'll just hope he's doing it right.
That's another God's Willing. So
yep. Okay, so this art is Defiant Strike. So +1/+0. Draw a card, and that pumped the Swiftspear. The Swiftspear naturally gets +1/+1 from the prowess. A big attack here and no block with the Strict Proctor. Maybe it's not a Doomscar if he's not willing to block with the Proctor, or just has Lotus Field in hand and wants to get that into play before casting the Doomscar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Montgomery falling to 3 has the sweeper here. Now it's a question of did Wolthius keep a haste creature in reserve?
Yeah, that Doomscar does clean it up and draws a card off of the Beanstalk. Here's 10th District Legionnaire, followed by another Pump Spell, and we got a quick game 1 to Wolthius.
Yeah. You always want, if you can leave one haste creature back and apply a good amount of pressure, that is the game plan from this Boros Heroic deck, because the haste creature is going to let you finish them off on the turn they tap out for the sweeper, and it worked to a T there in game 1.
All right, well, while that was a really fast game 1, these players are going to take some time here to look at their sideboards. Ross, why don't you give us your expert analysis on what you think these players are going to do?
So I've got Wolthius's list up first. He has some cool sideboard cards. Is a Giganta deck, so there's one sideboard slot taken up by the companion. Has 3 copies of Showdown of the Scalds, 2 Destroy Evil, 2 Flowstone Infusion, 2 Lawrence Escape, 2 Rydane, God of the Worthy, 2 Rending Volley, and 1 Rest in Peace. Love the Showdown of the Scalds as an excellent threat that can generate a lot of card advantage and can help you power through these sweepers.
You know, while it's a low land count deck, I think it does a great job of actually hitting its land drops because it has so many cards that cycle and replace themselves.
Yeah, 8 cantrips now and a lot of scrying action off of things like God's Willing and 10th District Legionnaire.
And against sweeper decks, you just get to the late game pretty often.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of the Rydanes. You know, we're trying to stop sweepers here, so making those 2 mana more expensive is going to be excellent. And I like the Lawrence Escapes. You know, 1 white mana, give target artifact or creature hexproof or indestructible until end of turn, and scry 1. So you can stop a removal spell like March of Otherworldly Light, or you can save one of your creatures from one of those sweepers, and that's effectively like having a haste creature because it'll stick around. You can attack with it on your next turn.
All right, well, on the other side of the table, we do have this awesome-looking Bant Lotus field with Up the Beanstalk. We saw Up the Beanstalk draw a card from itself and draw a card from the Doomscar before getting taken down by that haste creature. But what's he got access to in the sideboard that can help out against this aggro deck?
Well, I see some good ones here. We have 3 Dovin's Veto, 3 Temporary Lockdown, 2 Dragonlord Dromoka, 2 Narset's Reversal, 2 Thought Distortion, 1 Ether Gust, 1 Dream Trawler, and 1 Divine Smite. The temporary lockdowns are going to be excellent. That is a cheap sweeper that clears up all the creatures from the heroic deck. You know,
It's a little awkward with Strict Proctor, though.
a little awkward with Strict Proctor, but you know, if you have the lockdown, then just don't play the Proctor on turn 2. I think you can play around that pretty easily. Notably, lockdown at 3 mana value does not get affected by Rydane.
Yes.
You can't protect your creatures from it with a God's Willing or a Lorenz Escape, so that should be a great one. Dragonlord Dromoka seems like a pretty good one to, you know, turn the corner once you stabilize with some sweepers.
Yeah.
And the Dream Trawler as well. So you've got 3 over-the-top creatures that can take over the game quickly, and some extra sweepers that are excellent in the matchup.
Now, what do you think is going to be coming out from the Lotus Field deck? Because I feel like cards like Discontinuity are maybe a little too slow.
Yeah, we got 4 Discontinuity, 3 Memory Deluge. Maybe you want to trim on that since it's kind of slow. And maybe you want to trim on some of your Planeswalkers because you're planning to take over the game with those creatures instead.
Right. All right. Well, as these players are shuffling up here, we are in round number 3 of 6 of Swiss here at our $2,000 Pioneer Open. I want to shout out our sponsors. Thank you so much to Ultimate Guard for giving us a swag pack for every one of our Apex Invitational qualifiers. All of our Apex Magic Weekends feature 2 invitational qualifiers, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. And then those all contain the Archive deck box, the Boulder deck box, the Katana sleeves, tons of awesome products from
And
Ultimate
Cortex
Guard.
sleeves as well. So
Yeah. Also, thanks to Wings Etc. for keeping us fed last night. Ross got his go-to, the cauliflower wings and jerk tots.
yeah, a little hot honey garlic sauce on the wings. I was good to go.
And then thanks again to G Fuel Energy Formula for keeping us nice and hydrated and, well, I guess not hydrated, but nice and energized for these long days of magic.
Yeah, a little G Fuel, a little water. We're good to go.
All right, players are shuffling up here for game number 2. It looks like Wolthius might have taken a mulligan. We'll take a moment after he draws opener to see.
And this Lotus Field control deck is a little bit different than your typical control decks in that its late game is even more powerful. So you're sort of under the gun to really put them under a lot of pressure early, even more so than you would be against a normal control deck. So
Right.
I like the aggressive mulliganing.
Yeah, it has a lot of the good stuff from the normal, blue-white control deck, but just happens to have a stellar late game.
And once they get, a couple Lotus Fields on the battlefield, they start generating a ton of mana with Teferi Hero Dominaria untapping them, then cast Memory Deluges, and they start doing some dirty stuff.
All right, a Ganjo as the turn one land for Kyle Montgomery. That's usually a sign of weakness when you play your channel lands early. Maybe you're light. Hall of the Storm Giants is land number 2. We got favorite Hoplite from Wolthius, but no defense from Kyle Montgomery just yet. I thought I saw a Proctor in play, but didn't want to deploy it. Maybe has that temporary lockdown in hand. Or just wants to play it on the same turn where he plays Lotus Field to protect himself from spot removal.
Yeah, there are Reckless Rages in the Boros Heroic deck. Might have come out, but maybe Wolthius wants to deal with those Stern Proctors.
Here's Illuminator Virtuoso. This is a sick card. Let's get this one on the screen. Illuminator Virtuoso, 2 costs, 1/1. Whenever you target it, you can connive, and it has double strike. So if you can get this thing nice and big with a couple pump spells, it pumps itself with the connive, then you just got to give it trample. But you know what gives it trample for 1 mana and draws a card? Ancestral Anger.
Yeah, also have Monstrous Rage. Newly printed cards have plenty of ways to give Virtuoso trample here.
All right, here comes an attack. We're going to block the favorite Hoplites. This is the new Monstrous Roll, I believe, and we're going to connive. Monstrous Roll is such a powerful card from the new set. It looks harmless-ish, but the moment you put it on something like Illuminator Virtuoso, it starts to look a lot more like a Rancor.
Now, if Wolthius discards a spell here, this is already 10 damage coming across. Because you'll have a base 1/1 with a +1/+1 counter, a monster roll, and +2/+0 until end of turn.
All right, so Monstrous Rage coming down. We're going to connive with the Virtuoso. If we discard a spell, that's going to get a +1/+1 counter. The +3 power from Monstrous Rage is going to make it deal 10 damage this turn if he discards a spell. And that's at the minimum.
Yeah.
The cool thing about Virtuoso is it naturally has the double strike. You don't have to do anything fancy to give it the double strike.
Wolthius is counting here, and if I'm Kyle Montgomery, I am scared.
All right.
Ooh, we're digging for a monster roll token.
And if we have a legit one,
Oh,
we do.
yeah.
Nice. I like it when people bring the right tokens.
Wolthius is on camera the rest of the tournament.
I talked to him a good bit over the last couple of days. Cool guy. Here's, I believe that's the God's Willing, and we're going to connive again.
It's either God's Willing or Defiant Strike. Yeah.
You know, whatever. He's trying to find lethal this turn. I don't think he's going to.
So discarding a spell here would get us up to 7 power and double striking.
Yeah. And then if we have something like Defiant Strike, that could threaten lethal, I think.
That would get us to 9 power if you discard
18.
a spell again.
I guess we're doing it in even increments.
Yeah, it needs another Monstrous Rage. Another Monstrous Rage would be lethal here.
Well, he doesn't have it, or else he already would have killed Montgomery, I think. But
well, could draw it off the Defiant Strike. They were just resolving the Connive trigger right now.
Oh, right, cool. All right, so there's a connive. We're going to
discards another Defiant Strike.
Well, he's looking for lethal, like you said. He wanted the roll.
So this should be 14 coming across. Oh, has it!
Oh, Wolthius with the turn 3 kill. Illuminator Virtuoso's double strike and connive growth. A bunch of monstrous rolls doing massive damage. And he takes it down. Bant Lotus Field in shambles. Team Switch Gaming, we know who the dominant member is there. Wolthius.
Jesus.
Nicely
That was impressive.